Hello, welcome to BBC News. I'm Ben Bland. Our top stories. A mammoth blizzard brings much of the eastern United States to a standstill. 17 people have died and emergencies are declared in 11 states.
At Dulles Airport, we've had over 23 inches of snow. In neighbouring Virginia, they've had over 30 inches. These are near record-breaking amounts.
Disruption at the French port of Calais as 50 migrants board a British ship while it was unloading. The battle against the Zika virus intensifies. Now several countries warn women to avoid getting pregnant. And capturing the golden hours, we're in Antarctica in search of the world's longest sunset. Hello, more than 85 million people have been affected by a fierce snowstorm in the United States. Emergencies have been declared in 11 states and at least 17 people have died. Parts of the eastern US have had as much as 28 inches of snowfall in the last 24 hours. Road, rail and air travel have been paralysed. Our correspondent Laura Bicker is in Washington.
Here we are 30 hours in and we're still in blizzard-like conditions. As for the amount of snowfall at Dulles Airport, we've had over 23 inches of snow. In neighbouring Virginia, they've had over 30 inches. These are near record-breaking amounts and still it continues to fall.
The battle has begun. As this blizzard enters its final hours, there are attempts to try to clear up to 2 feet of snow from the nation's capital. In New York, where the snow's been worse than forecast, ploughs try to reclaim Times Square. All travel is now banned in the city. If you drive on the roads, you'll be arrested.
People have to heed these warnings now and immediately get home. And again, the NYPD will enforce this travel ban.
In New Jersey, the fight was against flooding. Freezing waters from a high tide not seen since Hurricane Sandy flowed into seaside resorts, and thousands lost power. Airports along the East Coast felt abandoned as over 7,000 flights were cancelled, and those who tried to drive struggled. In Kentucky, 3,000 cars were stuck on a motorway for hours. There were similar scenes in Pennsylvania where motorists have been stuck since Friday night, including a college basketball team and their British teammate.
I mean, the bus just stopped and we were told, yeah, there's an accident up ahead and we're going to be sitting here for a while. Snow's really picking up. I've never seen snow like this, coming from England, so I didn't really know what to expect.
The snowstorm has transformed the landscape of 20 states. 1 in 7 Americans will wake up to around a foot of snow. In Washington, the blizzard has been one of the worst in the city's history, turning its famous view of the White House into a whiteout in 24 hours. But there are some who simply cannot hide their joy at a snow day. Chan Chan is one of the few enjoying himself and doing his own particular dance through the worst of this weather.
The forecast is for the snow to continue into the early hours of Sunday morning and then the sun comes out, but that is when the clean-up must begin, and that could take both some time and be expensive.
Laura Bicker there. To New York now, and a short time ago my colleague Chris Rogers spoke to the ABC's correspondent Carla Baggio-Reina.
As you can see, the snow is still coming down, and it's coming down very hard. That's not only the problem here. The wind is blowing and causing quite a bit of trouble here. I'm not sure if you can see behind me, but over on my right, that'll give you a hint as to what the situation looks like almost in every block here in Manhattan. Car after car that is buried in snow here in the city. At least 16, 17 inches of snow have fallen in this blizzard, and more is expected to come.
It seems New York is really struggling to get through this. Is that a fair assumption? It looks incredibly quiet. It almost looks like a city at a standstill.
It really is a city at a standstill. There was a full travel ban that was made in effect at 2:30 this afternoon here in the city, which meant that only emergency vehicles were allowed on the street. No buses, no taxis, nothing but emergency vehicles were allowed on the street. And that is why you see virtually no traffic behind me. We've seen a few brave souls coming out and venturing out on foot just to take pictures and get the curiosity got the best of them. They wanted to see this firsthand. But most folks are heeding the warning of staying inside because the snow, again, as you can see, is still coming down pretty hard.
Carla, I know this isn't scientific, but in your own assumption, how quickly do you think New York can get back to normal?
Well, that's a question that maybe only emergency personnel can answer. What they have been telling all of New Yorkers is if they stay inside, if they are not out venturing in their cars, then they can do their best to come out here and plow these streets as quickly as possible. They are not ready to say whether the streets and the city will be back open on Monday. Everyone keeps talking about that. It is a good situation that this blizzard came on the weekend when most folks are not having to go to work, where the kids don't have to go to school. But again, I think it's too early to say if the entire city will be back up running on Monday. But the officials tell us they will be trying very hard. They're working 12-hour shifts to plow all of these streets to get everything back to normal as soon as possible.
Well, let's show you the scene. It's just there, in fact, in Times Square in New York. Normally, on a Saturday evening, it would be much busier. You can see some people are still out and about, but those large quantities of snow that have fallen, obviously making it very difficult to get around. Roads, tunnels, bridges into and out of the biggest city in the United States have been shut. And, of course, it's got a state of emergency in place. And it's only emergency vehicles allowed to go out on the roads. Anyone who is driving could face being arrested. Such is the concern about road accidents. Of course, we've been reporting people have died across the eastern United States during this snowstorm, most of them in road accidents. We can move on and show you another shot of New York. There we are. Although, to be honest, look at the visibility there. So badly reduced. You can just see the Empire State Building, but you'd be hard pushed to identify it if we weren't telling you, I think. It's you can see the effect of that extreme weather affecting people's plans of a weekend. People, for the most part, seemingly staying indoors, getting around very difficult. Since Friday, actually, I was reading that more than 10,000 flights in all have been cancelled since Friday. Washington and New York among the cities that were worst affected for those flight cancellations. That is the scene live for you in Times Square this evening. Let's turn to other news now. And a 17-year-old boy has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder after 4 people were killed in a school shooting in Canada. The teenager is also charged with 7 counts of attempted murder. Police say they don't yet know the motive for the shootings in La Loche in Saskatchewan. 2 of those killed were teaching staff. The other 2 were teenage brothers. The port of Calais in northern France was forced to close for a time after about 50 migrants got onto a ferry. They boarded P&O's Spirit of Britain as it was unloading. P&O Ferries says those who got on board were safely removed from the ship. Services at the port returned to normal. From the dockside, Dan Johnson reports.
Well, there has been serious disruption here at the port of Calais through this evening. The port closed for a time, huge disruption, massive delays with hundreds of cars and lorries backing up in long lines of traffic that spread around the roads here around the port. Well, it does look like things might be starting to get back to some level of normality. We've seen traffic moving again through the port and a number of ferries have just arrived. So it does appear that at least to other boats, the port is now reopened. But the Spirit of Britain that you see there, the P&O ferry, that has been stuck here for some time because of these migrants who stormed the ferry terminal here and climbed aboard. We've seen a video that somebody shot on board which actually shows the firefighting hoses on the ship being used to try and get rid of the migrants, to douse them with water to try and get them to leave. We also saw many police officers here trying to deal with them earlier on this evening.
Dan Johnson reporting. Let's round up some other news for you now. A 13-year-old Palestinian girl has been shot dead in the occupied West Bank by an Israeli security guard. Police say the girl tried to stab the guard at a Jewish settlement, the latest casualty in a recent surge of violence. Almost daily attacks over the past 4 months have left 25 Israelis and around 150 Palestinians dead. Protests have been held across Italy in support of same-sex partnerships. Thousands of people were out on the streets in around 100 towns and cities just days before the Senate debates a bill which would introduce civil unions. Italy is the only major country in Western Europe not to recognise same-sex civil partnerships. A woman in central England believes she has the winning ticket for an unclaimed $47 million lottery jackpot, but she put it in the washing machine. Although the numbers on the ticket can still be seen, some of the crucial details have been washed off. The woman, who hasn't been named, has now sent it off to the lottery operator Camelot in the hope that she can claim the money. Several Latin American and Caribbean countries are warning women to avoid getting pregnant because of growing concerns over links between the Zika virus and birth defects. Women who are already expecting are being urged to seek advice before travelling to some countries in the region. Brazil is facing an unprecedented surge in cases of a condition that leads to babies being born with abnormally small heads. Julia Caniero has been to the country's northeast, where the outbreak is at its worst. She sent this report from Salvador.
City agents are talking to people here in the streets of Salvador and carrying out inspections as part of a program to eradicate the Aedes aegypti mosquito. That mosquito is well known here as the dengue mosquito, but now also infamous for spreading the Zika virus and the disease known as chikungunya. Zika is being associated to the surge in cases of microcephaly here in Brazil, babies born with heads smaller than normal. Almost 4,000 cases registered in Brazil, and Bahia is the third most affected state with almost 500 cases. Brazil is getting ready for Carnival. In Salvador, around 700,000 people are expected. So there's a special effort in tourist areas like this to clean up and to combat the mosquito. But Brazil has been notoriously unsuccessful at tackling this mosquito in the past decades, with dengue epidemics every year, and now with the appearance of Zika, this leads to international concern. The virus was first detected here in May last year and is now already present in most Latin American countries.
That's Julia Caniero reporting. A political row has broken out in Britain after Google agreed to pay nearly $200 million in backdated taxes to cover the past decade. The ruling Conservative government has defended the settlement, but the opposition Labour Party has called the deal derisory in comparison with Google's profits in the UK. The BBC's Joe Lynham reports.
OK, Google. How much tax does Google pay in Britain? Google's tax affairs are quite a popular search item in the UK, especially now that it's agreed to pay £130 million in back taxes to HMRC. But there are some who feel that's a fraction of what should have been paid.
Well, I've been campaigning on this issue for the last 15 years. Under the last government and this government, I've been pressing for action. So this is too little too late. At least we've got something. But to be frank, it looks as though what independent assessors have said, this is only paying about 3% of tax. Most corporations are paying 20%. Ordinary individuals are paying much more than that. So I think most people will just think it's unfair.
Google enjoyed sales of £4.6 billion in the UK in 2014. Under normal circumstances, companies would have paid 21% tax on their profits. But because Google routes its UK sales via Ireland and then onto the Caribbean, it pays much less each year than this £130 million tax deal, which covers a decade of accounts. So does Google now accept that it had been paying too little?
We were applying the rules as they were, and that was then, and now we're going to be applying the new rules, which means we will be paying more tax.
Britain accounts for 10% of Google's total sales, but only a sliver of its corporation tax bill. But is getting the company to pay more tax merely an effort to improve its image.
When I became Chancellor, there were some companies that paid little or no tax, and that rightly caused a lot of public anger. We said we'd take action. Now we have companies like Google paying tax, and I want the message to go out that in Britain taxes are low, but they have to be paid, and I expect more companies to follow suit.
And it's not just Google, of course. Apple, the world's largest company, Amazon, the biggest online retailer, Starbucks, the #1 coffee franchise, are all under the spotlight. Facebook paid only £4,000 in UK corporation taxes last year. It may take a while to close the book on creative tax arrangements. Joe Lynham, BBC News.
You're watching BBC News. Stay with us, still to come. Coastal Care. We're in Bangladesh to find out how a floating hospital is providing medical support to hard-to-reach communities.
The people of